me too, 'cause you're there for me too.
So I'm not really sure if this is true for you or not, but I've been curious. I've been asking people that I've been hanging out with the previous services if you are still close with a friend from childhood, like you talk fairly regularly. And I'm not talking siblings, I'm not talking family like cousins. How many of you are still close with a childhood friend? So this is great. About 20 to 25% of the room. You're fortunate. I know for me, when I ask groups, the majority of the room, like me, doesn't really hang out with or talk to some of the people that I was close to when I was young. In fact, I was thinking about the guys in my wedding party 22 years ago, and I pulled out a picture, and what's interesting, this is back before we had iPhones. You know, we had to have like the film developed. That's how ancient I am. So the picture's all grainy, but I don't really hang out with any of these guys anymore, except for my brother, and I only see my brother a handful of times a year when we drive down to hang out with my family in Belleville. Mom, if you're watching, happy Mother's Day. But he's like, you ask, like, what happened? Like, I like these guys. Like, we were close, but when I thought about it, it's like life happened. I mean, 22 years ago, most of these guys were in college, and Lauren and I were married before our last semester of our undergraduate year, much to my mother-in-law's chagrin. So, mother-in-law, if you're watching, happy Mother's Day to you too. Okay, excited to hang out with you later. But Lauren, like, we hung out as a group with these friends for a year or two, but then they graduated, and they moved on. And so I see life updates now on social media, but and if I were to see them today, we'd hug each other, we'd reconnect. I mean, we would still be friends, but the truth is, we're not as close as we used to be. And the more I started thinking about this and thinking about different conversations that I've had with people graduating from college or empty nesters, like people in different phases, I feel like friending seems a lot harder than it used to be. Finding friends, keeping friends. I mean, when we were kids, it felt like easy. You'd play a game of wiffle ball together, and if you were on the same team, bam, you're friends for life. You play again tomorrow. You play again the next day. I mean, I still have visuals of playing wiffle ball with Rob and David, our backyard, cat-a-corner neighbors. We traded baseball cards together and played, rode bikes, did all sorts of things. And then we moved, and we just kind of lost touch. And it feels like that just happens in some ways. Like, I look back 10 years and think about the people that I was hanging out with a lot and how many of them are still friends today. I mean, I can look back 5 years to 2020, pre-COVID to post-COVID, and you're like, man, even some of those friendships changed, and for a variety of reasons. And maybe you're thinking of old neighbors that you were close with. I have friends like that, right? Coworkers. People you used to go on double dates with. It's like, what happened? Why is friending so hard? Why is keeping friends so hard? And when friends move or you move and it's time to start over, to find new friends, if you lose touch with someone, it's like, where do you start? Where do you look? It's like, why does it feel so awkward? Like, hey, I'm here to find some friends, and here's the thing. I don't know if you've realized this, but I think part of the reason, if you feel like this is challenging, part of the reason it's challenging is because we were never taught. You never took a class. There was nobody who sat down and said, here's what a friend is. We just figured it out. And I think as we get older, we just assume it should be easy, and when it's not easy, then something must be wrong with us. And so maybe there's more to it than we think. And I mean, some of you are confused right now. You're sitting there like, well, gosh, I don't know what you're talking about, Ben. I have lots of friends. Well, great, good for you. How do you know they're actually good friends? I mean, do you feel like you're really known by them? Or, I think what happens is our friends become an activity. We hang out together, you laugh together, have drinks together, but basically, your friends are around to make sure that you're not bored or alone at home on a Friday or Saturday. And so, have you ever left time with friends feeling like you were the one asking all of the questions? Or nobody really seems to know how you're really doing or care? Have you ever left feeling like you weren't really seen? See, I think it's like you can have all sorts of friends and still be incredibly lonely. And you can have a great family and still feel like you don't have great relationships. And just because you're married doesn't mean you like are friends with each other, that you're experiencing that depth of friendship, which is why I think the Surgeon General released this report on our epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Yeah, we are more connected now than ever, but knowing people doesn't mean you're experiencing a life-giving connection with them. And so he identified some alarming trends, things like 30% increase in death by suicide, 36% of Americans feeling lonely frequently, 45% of teenagers feeling hopeless most of the time, a 400% increase in people saying, I have no close friends. In fact, the study went on to reveal that social isolation increases your chance of death more than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, drinking 6 or more alcoholic drinks daily, physical inactivity, obesity, or air pollution. I mean, that's significant. Like, we need friends. In fact, we asked you at Easter, what is the number one challenge you're facing? And you said that relationships is the number one challenge you have in your life. And so how do we improve our relationships with our friends, within our family, and within our marriage? I just think we should talk about it. And so over the next few weeks, that's what we're going to step into. And so what are we going to learn? What is a friend? And how do we find friends? And what does it look like to grow in friendship with people? And if this sounds like a kindergarten class, welcome to kindergarten, okay? We're going to start at the beginning. In fact, I want to welcome you to Cedar Creek, whatever campus you are at, whatever device you're watching us on. I know it's Mother's Day weekend, and so many of you are hanging out with your mom, giving her a little fun experience at church, which I'm so glad that you're here. If we haven't met, my name is Ben, and I know we have people watching online, on TV, some men watching at Toledo Correctional. So those of you here physically, we just put your hands together to welcome our online friends and family, the men at TOCI. Now, I know some of you have conversations with me in your head, and some of you are like, well, Ben, I didn't come to church today for a TED Talk, okay? I don't really I could have looked that up on YouTube. So what's is there anything spiritual here? And believe it or not, the Bible has a lot to say about friendship. In fact, I think it might have as much, if not more, to say about friendship than it does about marriage and parenting. When you open up the Bible and go to the origin story in Genesis and look at the very beginning, when God created man and it was good and the garden was perfect and he placed him in the garden, one of the first things that God noticed is he said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper who is just right for him. And far too many people look at this and go, this is about marriage, when in reality, it reminds us that we were not created to do life alone. At this point, all of the introverts in the room are like, hold my beer. I can do life alone just fine. But it's like, what's he saying? He's saying that we're a multidimensional being. You have a physical body, yes, but you also have a mental and emotional being to you. And whether you fully believe it or not, it's hard to wrap our mind around the spiritual, eternal being of you. And your soul, my soul, your soul, we were created with the need to know others and to be known by others, to love others and to experience love from others. And the problem is we put it off. We get caught up in our career. We get caught up in what feels good in the moment. We just assume that relationship and friendship will come naturally to us. We assume that there'll be time for that later. And the truth is, we just don't fully realize how we spend our time. For example, some of you may have seen this. The time that you spend with children is starts in your 20s and ends in your 40s. I mean, think about this, parents, especially if you have kids at home. 90% of the time you're going to spend with your kids happens before the age of 18. 90%. So after 18, it just drops off significantly. And I know this doesn't make me popular with all the moms on Mother's Day, except for a few of you who are like, oh, I've almost hit the finish line. Please, bring it. So if that's you, congratulations, right? But here's the thing. What this tells us is your friends cannot be your life. You still need friends. I'm not saying don't be friends with your kids, but I think what happens is we go, oh, my kids are my friends. No, you still need friends. And so maybe you're thinking, well, I have some coworkers that I work with. And the truth is you spend more time with coworkers. That's great. And if you feel like you have a friend at work, you're fortunate. But they are work friends. Maybe they're real friends, but they're work friends. I mean, think about this. The average amount of time people spend in any given job right now is 4 years. That means your friends potentially are going to change, or you are going to change every 4 years. Work friends typically are friends for a season, and they're not bad, but you still need friends. And so what people do is they go, well, I'll get a partner. Like, I'll find somebody, which is great. And hopefully you're friends. But I don't know if you talk about couples, like talk to the couples in your life, but it's like sometimes they're not even friends. I mean, let's be honest. The most fulfilling marriages and relationships are those where you are enjoying intimacy, and I mean intimacy, and you also have deep levels of friendship. And sometimes what happens is parents get so caught up in their kids' lives that they fail to invest in their marriage, and then when the kids leave, they're like, I don't even know if I like you anymore. What happened? Well, we focused on kids, we focused on work, it's like we don't even know what it means to be friends, and we focus on all of those areas, which means what suffers is your time with friends. It peaks at, 18? And then drops off significant. It's like we stop hanging out with friends, which means when you look at the time you spend alone, it just goes up more and more and more almost every year. So it's like, oh yeah, I don't have a problem with friends. Really? Well, the studies say that we're on a trajectory that says differently. And the truth is, the older you get, the harder it is to find friends. The harder it is to feel like there's room in others' lives for you, or to find the energy or the willingness to risk. And so where do we start? Well, let's start at the very beginning. What is a friend? This is a really helpful definition. Friends are people who know and like each other. Welcome to kindergarten, right? I mean, it's like we know this, but I think it's important to acknowledge that a friend can really be anyone. It could be the bagger at Kroger. You know and like the bagger, and you think they like you, they know you, you know. Or it could be your ride or die. It could be somebody that you're really close with. There are degrees to friendship, and that is good. In fact, we need people in all of those different stages of friendship. I talked about the importance of this in January in our Power to Change series. And so over the next couple of weeks, what I want to go a little deeper on is explore the practical ways that the Bible teaches us to be friends. Okay? Our memory verse for the series is this: a friend loves at all times. Isn't that the kind of friend you want, right? Someone who's loves you, is loyal, somebody that you can trust. But a brother is born for a time of adversity. Now, sometimes when you read this, it's a little confusing. Well, is a brother a friend, or is your friend your brother, or what's the difference? Well, the truth is we all have family. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have a mom or dad at some point, right? So you may not have a brother, a sister, a sibling, but typically family is born for times of adversity. A family typically, though not always, has your back. You're for each other, but that doesn't mean you're always friends. Now, if your brother, sister, your family are close friends, again, you're fortunate. But a friend, what we're looking for, what we want, is someone who loves or is loyal or is with you at all times. And so how do we find that kind of friend? How do we become that kind of friend? And what I hope to show you today and next week is that the Proverbs, where I got this statement from, is full of godly advice on how to grow, how to look for, how to develop those kinds of relationships within your family, your marriage, but also your friend life. In fact, my encouragement to you would be to make Proverbs somewhere that you spend some time reading your Bible, exploring your Bible over the next few weeks as we go through this series. How do you do that? There's 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. So take today's date and read that one proverb today with a simple prayer. God, what principle do you think I need to apply to my life? And then trust that God's going to show up and speak. Do it with your group of friends. Do it with your family. I think you'll learn a few things out of that. Now, friendship isn't just talked about in the Proverbs. Jesus described the ideal friendship when he said there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's wife Well, he didn't say that. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do that. He didn't say for your kids. He said for one's friends. Remember, Jesus lived as a single adult. We all need friendships in our life. And this is the ultimate expression of friendship. Someone that would be willing to lay down your life for you, and you be willing to do that for them. I mean, isn't that what we want? Isn't that what our ideal of friendship is? We crave people like that in our life. Friendships where you're committed to each other, you're for each other. I think that's why we're drawn to shows like Friends, where you're like, you see them try to live this out. Or Harry, Hermione, and Ron, in the Harry Potter series. You see their friendship and their struggles through that. It's the stories that inspire us, like Goose and Maverick and Top Gun, or the inspirational life story of Harry and Lloyd. You know it's good. They're real friends, right? This is what we want. So how do we find that kind of friendship? Like, how do we find those kinds of friends? Some of you are wondering that today. I just need to find some friends. And I think potentially in the question is the problem. Potentially. The challenge. See, we confuse finding with developing. I think one of the mistakes we make as we get older is we assume we just need to find the right people. And if we could find the right people, we would be friends. And what we miss is it's about developing the right relationship. When we were kids, it felt like finding. You'd walk into the playground at recess, you would find somebody, you'd be like, hey, let's play together, and bam, you're friends. And so as adults, we just assume that it should go the same way. And what we don't realize is that really these friends that you had when you were young were developed over time through playing together. Life-giving friends are not people that you find. It's actually a relationship that is developed. And so that's the bottom line for the series. Life-giving friendship takes deliberate investment. And I know some of you, you're like, well, I don't have time for that. Then you have a choice to make. Do life alone, focus on your career, focus on you, and spend the majority of your life alone, increasingly alone, or learn how to deliberately invest and begin to experience the gift of life-giving friends. And that's really the choice, and that's what we want to help with. And I think this isn't just like nice to have. The studies show that this is almost life or death. Like, this is critical for your health. In the Proverbs, I think that's why it says, the righteous choose their friends carefully, deliberately, intentionally. They invest deliberately, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. Another word you could put there is the foolish. The foolish just take first available. The first don't really think about friends. They don't really pay attention to it. And what does it do? It leads them astray. I mean, the truth is, your friends today will shape your tomorrow. So those of you that are in high school, you're graduating high school, you're getting ready to go off to college, you're graduating college, you're getting ready to start a career, you're new to the area. Like, this is an intentional investment in your future. And so intentionally, deliberately, and develop life-giving friendships. And I mean, some of you may be going, well, I don't really know how to do that. I mean, it seems like I should. I'm embarrassed. But what does it look like practically? And the Bible, yes, is full of principles. But today, I want to look at an ancient king's reflection of life. It's written by King Solomon, who at the time, he was a few thousand years ago, but he was considered one of the wisest men on earth. In fact, he wrote the book of Proverbs. And so he was in the Proverbs, you see that he is one of the smartest, wisest kings who ever led, and he also wrote a reflection at the end of his life called Ecclesiastes. And so he talks about the value of friendship. He offers a framework in this passage that I think clarifies where we need to deliberately invest. 3 different ways that you can invest in your marriage, in your family, in your friends to deepen that relationship. And it comes from Ecclesiastes 4. If you've been to a wedding recently, you may have heard this passage, but he says 2 people are better off than 1. For they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm, but how can one be warm alone? And typically we think about the married relationship, and though these principles apply to marriage, he was not writing about marriage. He's writing about friendship. Friends are valuable. We need them. They're helpful. And what's missed, aside from the, friends are valuable, are the 3 deliberate investments that you can make to deepen a friendship with others. And so if you didn't see them, these are the 3 ways you help each other succeed, you help each other win, you help each other prosper. That was the first verse. You reach out to each other. There's a level of proximity, a closeness, a consistency being there, and then you keep each other warm, which implies a measure of intimacy, of vulnerability, of safety. And when you invest in that way, it will lead to increased feelings of friendship. Essentially, you begin to see the other and they begin to see you. You begin to know the other more and they begin to know you more. You begin to love or appreciate, be loyal to the other, and they are like that in return. So does that describe your friendships? And I think the answer is for some of you, yes. But when you look at the research, even the people who have lots of friends, I'm not sure. I mean, think about this. Is this other people's experience of you? Because oftentimes when we get together, we just like one-up each other with the stories. We do some things, we go home, and it's like, So like, what does it look like to intentionally invest in deepening some relationships with people that we're close to? I mean, that's the question that really kind of inspired today. And recently I saw a framework by a woman named Shasta Nelson, and she wrote a book in response to her own feelings of loneliness, even though she felt like she had lots of friends. So she had lots of friends, but she would leave her time with them feeling like, I don't know that we're really getting to know each other more, and I don't even know if they really care about what I'm dealing with. And then so the temptation is to go out and just try to find new people, new friends, make new friends. But she realized that that doesn't help either. Meeting more people won't solve this. Instead, you've got to develop a greater sense of what she calls frientimacy. And she developed this framework that I think is helpful. Frientimacy is these 3 ingredients. It's positivity, consistency, and vulnerability. And this is true for men, women, marriages, your adult kids. Like developing friendship, what did I say, takes deliberate investment. And where we start is positivity. That's where it begins. Think about what that means. A positive sign, a plus sign. It basically means adding or contributing, not detracting and withdrawing all the time. What did Solomon say in Ecclesiastes? 2 people, friends, help each other succeed. They add in a way that helps each other win. So on a very basic, practical level, one of the best investments that you can make to grow friendship with people that you care about is to have fun, positive, shared experiences together. It's to find ways to add value to each other's lives. As I was thinking about this in my own life, during COVID, during lockdown, when we weren't really having large gatherings and like whatever, it was confusing. I'm not trying to bring up bad memories for people, but we needed something to do as a family. And so I also wanted to support some local businesses. So I decided to do something that I thought would be fun. We did what we call the pizza playoffs, okay? We would take 2 different pizza shops that were in relative proximity to each other. I would go and buy a large pepperoni from each. I'd bring them home. We'd open them up. We'd taste them. And our family would be food critics for the next 35, 45 minutes. You know, it's like, I like this about that one. No, you're wrong. And the kids still talk about this. It didn't cost a ton of extra money, but it created a positive memory and experience in a season where we needed something positive, where we needed something to do, just a little outside of the box. See, the challenge that so many of us face is we let our brain get in the way. Sometimes when you hear ideas like that, the first thing that you think is, that's dumb. I don't know that I want to do that. I don't think that's going to work. And what your brain is essentially reacting to is not something that's bad, it's just different. And so it's like, I'd rather stay where I'm at, which doesn't necessarily add any value. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, my brother-in-law, Zach, he said, we should do a Tough Mudder. I'm like, what's a Tough Mudder? If you don't know what it is, it's like a 10-mile race where you crawl through the mud, you go through like swampy areas, you're soaked, you're cold, you jump into quarries, you go through mega ice baths, you're navigating electrical wires and barbed wire. Doesn't that sound fun? Right? You know, it's like this sounds miserable. And then 4 of us experienced it together, and it was It wasn't fun, but a shared experience with positive people. I mean, man, it started to grow a friendship. Zach and I were already friends, but Greg Truman and I are better friends today because of it. I mean, we had that shared experience. A few months after that, after we did a few of those, Zach was like, he's the facilitator of fun in my life. So he always comes up with these ideas. He's like, we should race cars. And I'm like, race cars? He's like, yeah, have you heard of 24 Hours of Lemons? I'm like, no. It's like you buy a car for $600 or $1,000 and you try to race it for 24 hours. And I'm thinking, that's a bad idea. Like, I've never raced, and I don't know how to repair a car, and $600, so we ended up with a Honda Del Sol turning laps up at Gingerman Racetrack. We did it 4 or 5 times, and now Ken Caldwell and I, Roll Cage Dave and I, like, we have this experience where we have a degree of friendship together. Initially, brain said bad, and the result was we grew in friendship. I did the Bourbon Trail, Ragnar, which is like an overnight run with a group of 10 people. And so today, Mitch and Caleb and other individuals that I didn't really know very well, we're friends because of it. It's why we take our interns and staff on trips to other churches in a 15-passenger van. Not because the van is comfortable, but because there's that shared experience that creates some fun. And so it doesn't have to be expensive. It could be pickleball. It could be traveling around to our amazing metro parks. It could be playing Jackbox games and laughing together. It could be using table topics, but find ways to have new experiences with each other. That is a fundamental, obvious thing that leads to an increase in friendship with people. Now, it's not just new experiences. I think you know this. You also need to be a life-giving presence when you're there, which means you don't do all of the talking and interrupting everybody and trying to one-up everybody. Or always complaining and gossiping about all the problems you're having at work. Or on the opposite side, never doing anything, never contributing. Like if you show up and it's always about you, it reminds me of this proverb that says, the leech has 2 suckers that cry out, more, more. You're like, that's in the Bible? It's like, yeah, I imagine King Solomon sat down to think about a couple of people in his life that every time they show up in the room, it's like this giant sucking sound takes place. And he's like, all of the energy is being drained out of my big toe, you know? Some of you are picturing people right now. You're like, yeah, I know exactly who that is. If you're throwing elbows, please stop, okay? Trying to create a safe place for everyone. And a leech is someone who's always asking for more. Some of you moms are like, yeah, that's exactly how it feels. It's just kids clinging to me all day long, sucking the life out of me. If this is your experience with your friends, maybe it's time to find some new friends. And if this is people's experience of you, they may not be telling you that, but man, that's not positivity. Developing friendship requires positivity, not life-sucking energy. We're actually going to talk about this a little bit more next week and talk about the difference between a blessing and a curse and how do we add life, not take life from people. But the principle is this: positivity is the foundation. This is where most friendships begin, and it feels surfacey, but you need this foundation of having positive experiences together that leads to increased degrees of friendimacy with others. Your positivity matters, and so does theirs. It's foundational. The more positivity that you both bring, the more life-giving the relationship will be. Not a lot of positivity means not a lot of friendimacy. It's going to be surface, so pay attention to that. The second area that we can deliberately invest is consistency. And I know this sounds obvious, but we miss it. Friendship is like investing in your retirement account. It's the small investments that seem insignificant, but invested over time that compound into something amazing, large, way more significant than where you started. And so you can't fast track a significant friendship. This is why it feels hard sometimes. What did Solomon say in Ecclesiastes? When one person falls, the other reaches out and helps. How can you do that? Well, there's got to be a consistent proximity. If somebody falls far away, I can't reach out and help. But if you're consistently connecting, like if there's this proximity of closeness, then you're available, you're paying attention in the kind of the meh of everyday life, you're tuned into what they're going through. One of the areas where I thought about this, where I've experienced this, is I play Fortnite a few nights a week. Yes, I'm a grown man who plays Fortnite, and I'm getting smoked by your 8-year-olds, okay? It's a real problem. It crushes my ego. And so to help with this, I've recruited a few other guys, and basically we just, after the kids go to bed, we spend a few minutes having fun together, playing a game, getting smoked by your, preschool, middle schooler, young, whatever, kids. And the truth is, we've actually grown closer as a result. That's right. It hasn't been the depth of conversation every single night. It's been the consistency of conversation that has then led to a deeper awareness of what we're all going through and a care for that. I have another friend, Matt, who's in my men's group on Thursday morning. He's played Halo with the same group of about 8 to 10 guys for over a decade, almost 15 years. And he would describe his friendship with them, even though it's through a video game, with deep closeness. Because deliberate investment consistently over time is powerful. But that's the problem. Some of you are telling me right now, Ben, I don't have time for that. I got too much to do for work. We got kids everywhere. I'm too tired. So am I. I have the same struggles and the same temptations. The problem is we focus on what's pressing now versus what could be priceless later. And so we let the phone call that's pressing now take over. The work tasks that are needed now take over. The kids that are present now. And as my good friend Jason Brower says, we'll light ourselves on fire to keep everybody else warm. And then we end up a pile of ash. All of those things are important and valuable. But what it does when we let what's pressing now take over is it lulls us into thinking we'll have time for that later. And see, skipping dinner with friends now or a small hangout with friends now, it's not going to cost you that much. It's not going to make or break your friendship. But what we forget is that a rich relationship is cultivated over years of dinners together. That it's the consistent compounding effect that leads to that. And so consistently, deliberately investing in positive friends over time will lead to a priceless friendship. This was talked about often, even in the first century church, where one author writing to a group of Jesus followers said, we need to think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. Yeah, it's not that different today. We got to motivate each other to step into friendship. Why? Because it's tempting to sit at home in our comfy pants and scroll or binge watch something, because that's a whole lot easier than trying to get ourselves together to go hang out with friends, right? So we got to motivate each other because the gravitational pull is to stay home alone. And so let's not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, as it is so tempting to do, but let's encourage one another. Why? Because there's a mysterious, unseen value in that casual, consistent connection with other people, with people who are new friends, loose, weak tie friends, or sincere friends. And what's funny is we don't typically see it beforehand. All we see is the work and the trip and the money and getting yourself together. But then often when you leave those experiences, you're like, I'm glad that I did that. I'm encouraged. I'm thankful. And so you know what that means for some of you? Some of you, especially who have been watching online or at home and you're near a campus, maybe it's time to start physically attending or consistently attending. What space do you have in your life where you meet a group of people trying to get better together? I mean, this is different than drinking culture. This is different than just going to a concert. Those things, going to a concert is fun and it's fine. And sure, we can meet people in those environments, but I don't know that it's always what's best for you. And coming here and connecting with people like this, man, it's powerful. Is it easy to stay at home? Yes, but it may be costing you something priceless, something your soul craves. And so consistency is this undervalued investment that over time plays a role in growing a rich relationship. Which means for some of you who are new here in this community, you've recently moved, and your friendships aren't the same as where you came from, don't give up. Yes, it's hard. Keep consistently investing. Keep developing those relationships. It'll be worth it. It will. It's going to take a little time for them to catch up to where your previous relationships were. That's why it's hard. But stay positive, stay consistent, and lastly, be vulnerable. This is the scariest. You're open to attack, right? It's like you're exposed. And I mean, stereotypically, this is a space that men really don't like to get into, right? It's what did Solomon say? It's two lying close to each other that keep each other warm. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to snuggle up with just anybody, okay? I can think of one person, and she's my wife, that I'll snuggle up with. Why? There's something vulnerable about that. And yet, what we all crave is to be known in such a way where, like, the secret broken parts of our lives are seen by someone and not shaking them. Like, we want to be known deeply. So, and I'm not talking just about secrets and struggles and sins, although that's a part of it. I'm also talking about your successes and what makes your heart sing and your dreams and what you're proud of. Like, we crave people in our life that see that. And the people that I'm closest to, they see me unfiltered. They've experienced some of my worst, but they also know some of my best. They know what lights my heart on fire. That is a powerful level of friendship that you don't just get to. As I was preparing for this, I was reading Arthur C. Brooks, who wrote the books From Strength to Strength, helping people find success, especially in the second chapter of their life. And one of the stories that he shares, he was spending time with his family and he took a phone call. And when he got done, his son Carlos asked him, "Who was it?" And Arthur was like, "It's just a friend." And his son's reply, he said, "Was it a real friend or a deal friend?" And Arthur was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And Carlos was like, "You know, Dad, we don't have many real friends in life, but you know a lot of people, a lot of important people, and you do deals for each other. So was it a real friend or a deal friend?" Isn't that interesting? See, I think sometimes we confuse deal friends for real friends. And deal friends aren't bad. We need them. We need people in our life where we do things for each other. But I think that we think that that's what real friendship is. You do this for me and I'll do something for you, and that's a deal friend. And if we don't cultivate some vulnerability, friends that we are unfiltered with, that we are real with, then I don't know that we ever really experience real friendship. And so do you have real friends or deal friends? I'm not saying deal friends are bad, but don't confuse them for real friends. I mean, one of my personal values is that I want the real you and me to show up. I want the people that I'm closest to, like, the closer you get to me, the more I want you to respect or appreciate me. I don't want what people experience to be a front. Like, I don't want to play games. Like, who you see here, I want to be the same person when you see me face to face in the lobby. Now, if it doesn't turn out that way, if there's a part that I need to play or like it gets a little weird, I'll be friendly. But when I experience someone that I feel like I can trust, that I can be real with, I want to deliberately invest in those relationships. And I'd encourage you to do the same. The challenge is not everyone is healthy enough or ready enough to be trusted with the real you. It's why King Solomon said this: "There are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother." Like, have you ever experienced a friend that destroys you? Like, the closer you got to them, the more dangerous, the stabbed you in the back, you gossip about, you heard how they really feel about you through someone else. Suddenly you couldn't trust them, don't respect them anymore. Like, man. So I pay attention. I watch how people handle conflict with their other friends. I watch how they gossip, if they gossip about their other friends, because if they're gossiping to me about them, they're probably gossiping to them about me. I watch how they follow up. Do they forget? So that I can discern, are they a real friend or are they just using me? Am I just a deal friend to them? I would encourage you to pay attention to the same thing. And how are you showing up in those relationships? Are you sticking closer than a brother, or are you potentially dangerous? Another thing to pay attention to is this: wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. Just because somebody's complimenting you doesn't make them a real friend. People will compliment you and me all day long if it leads to a deal for them in the end. Like, that's what deal friends do, and sometimes that's okay, but real friends will be honest to the point where they may share the truth with you in a way that hurts. And so do you have real friends who are really honest with you, even about their concerns? Like, do you allow space for this? Are people allowed to speak honestly with you? Are you that kind of friend to others? The same principle said differently that some of you have heard before is, as iron sharpens iron, so one friend sharpens a friend. Think about the visual of this. Like, if this is ideal friendship, do you know what it takes to sharpen iron? Scraping away the rough edges, pressure increasing, sparks flying. A real friend is someone who wants more for you than from you. And so are you pursuing that kind of vulnerability? It takes courage. It takes vulnerability. In fact, in the first century, Paul, who was writing to some first century Christians, talked about this kind of deep friendship where you know each other, and he used the human body as a word picture for this kind of friendship. He says, if one part of the body suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. That's why if you stub your toe, your whole body feels it. And if you experience something exciting, your whole body feels it. Like, that should describe our friendships, where we know how to meet people right where they are, in joy and in heartache. I mean, this is a picture of what it means to be not just friends, but the church. The church is not just the building, it's the body of Christ. And the church is God's response to our lonely, broken relationship world. We are to provide a safe space for people to be known, to be seen, and to begin a Christ-centered friendship journey together. This is why we talk about groups. It's not just some side program that we're like, oh, we should be in groups. Groups are really an opportunity for you to grow in friendship, to meet new friends, and to make space for other people to be yours. And so summer groups are going to start in a couple of weeks after the mayhem of May. So we're going to open up the summer groups directory, and there will be some fun groups for you to try, some deeper Bible study groups for you to try. So if you're an introvert, find an activity that would be fun for you and go for the activity and be open to meet someone new. Or maybe you need to expand the circle of people that you know, or take a friend with you to develop your relationship together. But use the summer not just to do what you've always done, but deliberately invest in a life-giving friendship. I think it's valuable, not just for you, but for our community. And I'm not sure if you've thought about this, but friendship isn't just something for us. It was valuable to Jesus. I'm not sure if you've seen this, but he said this to his followers: I no longer call you slaves or students, because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends. Like, since I've told you everything the Father has told me, I've been vulnerable with you. You didn't choose me, I chose you. Like, what's Jesus saying here? You're wanted. Not to just be some robot that does things for him, but to be a friend. Like, he wants a relationship with you and me. We talked about this during Losing My Religion. And Jesus invested positively, contributing for us what we couldn't contribute on our own. He's consistent. He did what he said he was going to do. And he gave vulnerably, sacrificing himself on the cross for our sins and coming back to life to give us a chance of a new life with him. He was all of that for us. And he invites us to be all of that with him, to experience real relationship with him. And I believe when we do that, when you experience that, we're able to share that with each other in life-giving ways. So are you friends with God? Like, where's your friendship with him? I want you to take the next couple of minutes and just kind of reflect. I want you to think about your life. And I believe that when you give space for God to speak, he does. And so what's God prompting you to do right now? What step do you need to take? Where do you need to deliberately invest in a life-giving friendship? And maybe it's just be more intentional with the people that are friends right now. Maybe it's time to try something new, to find and begin to develop friendship with some new people. Maybe it's time to let go and distance yourself from people who aren't positive, consistent, vulnerable, life-giving friends. Maybe it's your marriage, where this gives you a framework on some things to work together, or with your family. Bring it up in conversation when you're hanging out with friends and family today, this week. Blame it on me. Hey, at church today, I heard this. What do you think? But what deliberate investment can you start to make today? Which for some of you, maybe it's to start a friendship with God. Maybe you can't think of a time when you've received His grace and understood that He wants to begin a life-changing relationship with you. So wherever you're at, would you just bow your heads? Be reminded of how much God loves us, that He calls us His friends, and let that inspire us to be friends with Him and the people around us. And if you can't think of a time when you've surrendered your life to Christ and received the gift of His forgiveness and grace, and wherever you're at in the quietness of your heart, just say, God, I want to be in a relationship with you today. I receive the forgiveness that Jesus offered at the cross and the new life that He made available by coming back from the dead. I want to follow you. Make that your prayer right now. Make today the start of your life-changing adventure with Him. God, for all of us, thank you that you don't just look at us as your minions. You look at us as your friends. What a gift. May we remember that and receive that. And God, would you give us the courage to make deliberate investments in the friends that we have?